Welcome back to As Told by You. We have a great guest today. Sumner is somebody that I have apparently known for a while and didn't know that I knew her. She is the director at the Nickelodeon Theatre in downtown Columbia, but also formerly the theater director at Spring Hill and directed several Irmo Chapin Recreation Commission plays that Katie was in. And so we kind of knew Miss Bender. I didn't put it together until we were talking there for a few minutes, and so that's kind of a.
And you know my wife, Elaine Arnold.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's why you look familiar.
Small towns.
Where I think you were at. The last time I saw Elaine, we were at this award ceremony for people who give money or something, and so okay, that's what
Yeah, it's what happens in this town a lot. Is that you know. And a lot of times I'll have guests on here that I've known for a long time, and I'm introducing them to Brian for the first time.
Yeah.
And so he gets to not be briefed on the guest.
It's a little game we play.
Oh, I love it.
So
gives me more opportunities to ask questions.
That's right. And so sometimes his face will go like, "What? Who is that?"
Yeah.
You know?
But Katie is great. Loved working with Katie. When I figured out, because there's been thousands of children over the years, and then I was like, wait a minute. I think I was like, was she one of the seagulls?
Yeah.
And she was, in fact, one of the seagulls. And let me tell you, I have a little anecdote about her. She talked about you. She was like, my dad helps me and we practice a lot. But she would come into rehearsals and she'd be like, I'm not a natural. She's like, but I'm going to work really hard. And I was like, that's the coolest thing anyone has ever said to me. And she would. And she ended up being she knew every place that she was supposed to be. I think I ended up giving her more lines because she was so responsible. So loved working with her.
You know what's funny
trip.
is, so I told her that you were coming on and she was really excited.
Yay.
And I told her what you said. And she was like, I just thought she didn't like me. And I was like, really? And I was like, yeah, because she lost a prop somewhere or something. She's like, I lost that prop, and I just don't think she liked me because I lost the prop. And I was
don't even remember the prop.
I know, and that's what I said. I said, I don't think she even
all.
noticed that you did that. I think that was something that you were worried about, you know, but that didn't actually happen.
That's so funny. I often, and I also try not to, I have a very different personality, when I'm directing and all that kind of stuff. It's very professional, and even when I was a teacher, I said I run it like a sports program. So but you always I loved Katie.
Well, you have to do that or they'll run over you.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if you don't control, and Brian knows this, he coaches kids. I mean, if you don't control the scenario, they will run over you if you give them the opportunity. So I am with you there. So tell me how does somebody get to be the director of the Nickelodeon Theatre, and how did all that come about? What was your path to get there?
Well, from Columbia. So I think first and foremost, that is helpful because I know the history of the organization just by proxy, right? Just from being here. I've known about it for a long time. I used to go to the Nickelodeon when it was on the other side of the State House, and it was a one-screen, tiny room. By the end of the place there was folding chairs because all the chairs were worn out. Also, people don't remember, the bathroom was in the movie theater in that location. So you couldn't go to the bathroom during the movie, or if you did, everyone was with you. So that's a little anecdote that I love about the old space. So when they... I've just known about their journey moving to Main Street. But I think the biggest thing is that I've been, quote unquote, in the arts in Columbia my entire life. So I started doing theater with workshop when I was about, 8 years old, if I was that old. So I was taking dance at Betty Stockman when I was 3. So it was just, I think my parents were like, oh my God, get her somewhere where she can express and get this,
Stop expressing at home so much.
They were like, you're for the stage. Clearly, this is what is going to happen with you. And there was no other option. So, and I always stayed with it all through middle, high school, college. It's funny, I never studied it. In high school, you take theater class and stuff like that, but I never actually studied it. I was a public relations major. I was in the journalism school, English minor, studying. I wanted to go into event planning and stuff like that. So, and I just love communication anyway. So I was like, this will give me a good basis for whatever position I move into. Then I started working at a nonprofit foster care company, just totally outside of the realm. But I've always worked in nonprofits anyway. But while I was doing all that, back in maybe 2003, I had this group of friends. I mean, before that, in 2001, I was working with this director named Chris Cook, and we were doing these like really avant-garde productions at like totally random places. Like we did a very maybe not legal production of Reservoir Dogs.
What?
Because he just took the script and like made it into a play, and we performed in it. It was amazing. And I did like 6 shows with him in 1 year, and that
Wait, you were in Reservoir Dogs?
I was in Reservoir Dogs.
Okay, wait a minute.
I was the only girl.
You can't just drop that and move on.
Yeah.
What were you in Reservoir Dogs?
So Officer McCluskey.
Oh.
It's a cut scene. So if you go back and watch the cut versions, she's in there. She's like eating a hamburger. I had one line that is not appropriate to say.
Wow.
And I got to yell it, and it was amazing. And I was just working with these really cool people.
I just rewatched this with my wife the other day because she and I are huge fans of Pulp Fiction, but she had only seen Reservoir Dogs once, and she said, so I don't like it. She doesn't like all the violence and all of that stuff. And so we watched it, and I realized how much of a play it really is.
It really is.
It is a one-room play.
It was
for the most part
fantastic.
Yeah.
And I mean, just I met incredible people. And then we did, I was introduced to who is now my best friend, but she worked with Trustus, and she was in their apprentice company, and she was like, you should come and work with us. We had this young adult company called Armchair Productions, and it was USU students. And so that's how I got involved. And I literally walked in and was like, hey, I want to volunteer. And they were like, come bartend on Sunday. Because you have to start on Sunday if you want to be a bartender. Because Fridays you can really make some dough, right? So I came in, and that was like, I have this very clear image of that day. It's just stuck in my mind. And, I got to meet Kay and Jim Thigpen, who started Trustus, and, Dewey Scott Wiley, who's been artistic director forever. And there's all these characters coming in and out. And, I'm like, be cool, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to be cool because they just want people who like do stuff. So, and then I just never left. And I went from volunteer bartending and ushering to stage managing I stage managed so many shows, and then I became the publicity manager. So while I was doing PR in college, I started doing the publicity for Trustus, and that was really fun. And, after that, I ended up moving from that position to the board. So 10 years after all the volunteer work that I had done, I was talking to Kay about the board, and I was like, well, that sounds frustrating. Why don't you just put me on the board? And she was like, oh, I had no idea how boards really worked at that point. And she was like, okay, let me go do this. And so they did. And I ended up being on the board at a really, really interesting time because that was like 2011. 2012 is when Jim and Kay were retiring. And so they were handing over the reins to Larry Hembry, who was coming from the Nickelodeon, which is really interesting. Our paths crossed there. And he came in, and so I was there in this really interesting transition, right? So to go from founders of an organization to a new executive director in a place that's beloved, and I'm getting all different sides of this, and really starting to understand and appreciate the board side of things. Yeah. And so I stuck around with the board for a while. There was, there was craziness in that organization. So Larry was there for about 3 years, and then he left. And then there was another executive director, and I won't go into all the issues, but then she left very quickly. And then we were trying to hire a new person. And then basically came down, and we were like, well, we'll just keep, we had somebody working there, and was like, we'll just make him producing artistic director and work with him. And then COVID hit. And by this point I'm president. So I was on the board for 5 years. I became president after 5 years. And then one of the things was I was like, we're probably not doing things, legally, not illegally, but this is an organization.
But not necessarily legally.
I should probably.
It can get kind of gray.
Let me check. So I brought in an employment attorney to come in and do a risk assessment for us. And that was really like just this groundbreaking moment for me where I learned a lot about the law when it comes to nonprofits and those sort of things. And so all this is to say, I'm just building this experience without even knowing I'm doing it, right?
Right. Well, I think it's interesting that there are so many theater kids out there that think like me. When I was in college, I was like, I really don't want to do this. I don't want to act. I don't want to live at the theater. Like, I'm not cut out for it.
Sure.
I didn't really find anything else to do. I just kind of moved on to a different thing. So it's very cool to see like you have just kind of taken this to a, just kept building it up.
It is really, and I used to tell my students this, like I would find a need, and then it's like when you're younger and your parents are like, I don't want you to ask to do the chores. I just want you to do the chores. Yeah. Well, I was terrible as a child. So like I wasn't doing that. But then I grew up, and it's like all of a sudden the things that your parents were trying to teach you, you're like, oh, that was actually really smart. And so that's what I was doing, and finding needs and trying to help. And then it just led me to having these great experiences. And I will say, there was one day, because I perform too occasionally, but Kay and I were standing outside, and she's smoking a Camel Light. Mm-hmm. She's from New York, and so she's got this great accent. She's like, be on the business side of things. That's where it's at. And I was like, interesting. I was like, okay. And that's, I kind of stuck around with that, and then ended up hiring the new executive director who's there, Jessica Fichter, who worked with me in Richland Lex 5 as a theater teacher. And so I was now teaching at at Spring Hill High School, the theater teacher, board president, trying to find a new executive director, directing Mamma Mia the musical. And then I also broke my neck during this time period. Oh, no. So I like to say that 2001 tried to kill me, literally. Mm-hmm. And so I brought Jess in, introduced her to the company. They said they liked her. That was on a Sunday. Monday at 5 a.m. I called a vote for the board and to hire Jess. And I said, Daryl, our vice president, will be taking over because I will be going under anesthesia to have neck surgery. And then I woke up, and I had been teaching or working with ICRC directing children's theater since 2012.
Okay.
So 2002, the kids I'd been working with for 10 years were graduating. Mm-hmm. So many of them started literally when they were 8 years old with me in a production of Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh gosh, this is a really interesting time in my life. And someone reached out to me in January and said, have you thought about the Nickelodeon job? And I was like, hadn't even crossed my mind, because they were hiring an executive director the same time I was. So I wasn't even paying attention.
Yeah.
So I was like, whatever, send in my resume. We'll see what happens. And then a couple weeks go by, I hear back, and then I start going through the interview process, and I'm like, wow, life is so crazy, because I just did this on the reverse.
Yeah.
So I know
exactly what they're looking for
to do. Yeah. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. The way that life prepares you for things sometimes, and you don't even realize it, and it's all just the experience that you have. And then, so they were in a terrible position over at the Nick. I don't think anybody would fault me for saying that. They literally, in my second interview, they announced in the newspaper right after that, that they were closing for a month.
Yep.
And I was like, they did not say that to me in my interview just now. I was like, that's really interesting. So they shut down because they had brought in an HR firm and essentially terminated everybody.
Yeah.
And so
I observed that on social media.
Yeah.
When several friends of mine were in that spot. Yeah.
It's really interesting. And
not knowing what happened, I just saw people's reactions to it.
Yeah. No, and they handled some of that very poorly. And I think a lot of it, so much of it is perception, right? Like the way that you handle the messaging of a situation really can dictate how well a situation goes. And it was not good. And I was like, y'all clearly need me. And so, over my spring break, I went and worked there for a week and got to know some people, because we were hiring people back, and they had hired a bunch of temp people. Literally a temp agency came in and put people to sell popcorn and tickets. And so in June of 2022, the students graduated on Friday, it was my 40th birthday. I went and saw Dave Matthews for 2 nights. And then on Monday morning, I started at the Nick. And it was it's been the craziest 3 years of my life. I was so prepared, but also not prepared at all for what to expect. And so I basically just had to restart the organization. I had to hire staff, everything.
Yeah.
And there were some people who were really impatient. You know, they were like, do everything now.
Right.
Fix it. Why haven't you fixed it yet? And I was like, y'all made this mess. Listen,
By the way, that's about the most millennial thing I've ever heard, that you spent your 40th birthday at Dave Matthews concert for 2 days.
He had never...
That's a very millennial statement.
Well, I would disagree that we're millennials, so...
well, I mean...
I feel like I'm an exennial.
Okay,
so
yeah,
it's
85
that's what I hear.
Technically when millennials start, just to let you know.
So he had not come to South Carolina. They stopped coming. I went to a show in 1996. They refused to come back to South Carolina for a long time, multiple reasons. I think the flag had a lot to do with it. Mm-hmm. So this was the first time they were going to be in South Carolina. And I was like, did he know? Like, was he like, we're coming here for your birthday?
Yeah,
obviously.
That's right. Yeah.
And so it was fantastic.
Well,
and
so how does the theater world translate to the other theater world?
It's really interesting. So, I have such a stage background. I will say it's really, the difference is I don't have actors, right? So I don't have this like revolving table of people who come in that we pay regularly at $10.99 like Trustus has. But we have a lot of hourly staff. So that was the big difference. There weren't these actors, but there was an hourly staff. So that's a whole different world because in the nonprofit world, so I feel like we've got our full-time staff that's sort of, obviously we're operational and running the organization, but we're very mission driven. Like, what are the special programs we're going to do? What are the community projects? And then we've got our front of house staff that are like, all right, they are the ones that are popping popcorn, selling tickets, cleaning up, changing beer kegs, all that kind of stuff. And that was the biggest difference. And navigating those HR battles, I'll say. There's just, whenever you work with people, there's always going to be stuff that arises. And so having new situations come up a bunch that you never know are going to happen is really interesting. And I have a very, I will say one of the biggest things when we talk about diversity is like generational diversity. So we've got a lot of different generations working with us. And a lot of my mediating has been about that. And, but I also came in and said, we're going to pay our front of house staff well. And which is a difficult decision as an executive director, because then you have to pay them. Yeah. And so you have to make sure that you can make that money to pay them well.
Right.
So we had fewer full-time staff members, so we could pay front of house staff well. And the majority of them have been with us for 3 years. So we've had very little turnover. Like I'm
cool.
always
like front of the house staff, especially.
Absolutely. I'm like, if you want to go get a job, like if you feel unfulfilled by this, go get a job. I'll give you a recommendation, and they love it. And I'm like, we love you. And so if you come to the Nick, you're going to like start recognizing the people that you see, and they've become like family. So it's really been, it's been a whole 3 years. That's for sure.
Well, what is it that makes people come to the Nick versus going to their sort of neighborhood?
Well,
theater?
That's one, is because, literally you come in and during the previews, we're showing our member names on the screen. And so like people your name might be up there. We also do that on top of like different Columbia landscape areas. So, we'll have, pictures of the lake up there. So it's literally your hometown theater. For a while, we had this video playing about the Chicken Man. So it was this little short documentary about Chicken Man, and it played, and it's just, I went to a Regal at one point and I was like, it's so corporate. Even though this is in my hometown, it doesn't feel, it could be anywhere, right? But when you come to the Nick, you're in the Nick in Columbia. Yeah. And then also every other movie theater in downtown Columbia has closed. So it has driven people to our, like that happened around Barbie. So right before Barbie and Barbenheimer, if you will, a lot of places had closed and people were having to remember the Nick for the first time in a long time.
Sure. And the options were drained.
Were drained. And so, and I was very thankful for that. And that has given us the ability to so I will say it's just comfortable. It's your hometown cinema. We really do have fantastic popcorn. I should have brought you some.
You should have brought us some
popcorn. I wish I was. I know, sorry.
Now you should request that next time.
You have to come to the Nick to get the popcorn. So that'll be my but yeah, so
I was looking for something to do. And I will tell you that my wife doesn't go to the movies anymore because of the recliners. Well, because she cannot sit in the recliner, recline back, and not without go to sleep.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't want to go to a movie theater that doesn't have a recliner.
I know. So I'm kind of trapped, right? I'm in that spot.
She can come see us because we don't have recliners. So we actually have two theaters. We have a downstairs theater that has 97 seats, I think. And they are very similar to the ones that were in the original Nickelodeon. They're small and they're black and they don't go all the way up. And it's got that indie feel to it, right? That's where we do a lot of our special programming, our foreign films, our documentaries. If we have a talk back, I love to do it in there because it's very intimate. But then upstairs that they built in 2015 is more of a traditional movie theater. You've got these big red seats. They're very plush. They're very comfy, but they don't recline. People, some people want.
It's a blessing and a curse.
It
is. She's like, I'm not paying $20 to go into the movie theater and fall asleep in 8 minutes.
Absolutely.
I can do that at home.
Yes.
And so
I'm not paying $20 to sit in
a movie
rickety chair for 3 hours either.
No, that's true.
So I will say that's another thing though, is that because we're a nonprofit and this is something different, one of the main concerns you hear about people going to the movies is cost, right? Mm-hmm. Especially in the past couple of years, everything has skyrocketed. And so going to an AMC, a Regal, if you go, it's the 2 tickets, it's the popcorn, it's the drinks. I mean, you're spending $75 to $100 a couple.
Yeah.
And you're not going to spend that at the Nick. You're going to spend $25 a person. So you're going to spend about $50 on the same stuff that you would get. So we did implement our tickets. We did raise the prices and put a service charge in there because we were paying $50,000 a year in credit card fees.
Wow.
And people were like, negotiate with them. And I was like, okay.
Easier said than done.
They really care about us, you know? And they were like, oh, your nonprofit has to have 90% donated funds for you to be able to get a discount on your credit card fees. And I was like, so no. So I put the service charge in there and it has done a number to really help us overcome those credit card fees. And then we've kept concessions really low. So that's what we focused on. So there's nothing besides a jumbo bag of popcorn. You won't spend more than $8 on something at concessions, and that includes draft beer.
It's more of an event too. Like if you're going to the theater in your neighborhood, you're just kind of, if I'm going to AMC and I live in Irmo, I'm not really going anywhere,
That's not as exciting.
To go down to the Nick, you can kind of.
Vice versa though. I'm down in downtown.
Yeah.
But I'm going out.
Yeah, going to Sandhills, you're going like
you have to go all the way out there.
Yeah,
but then you're in, you have the whole. So the thing is about that too is the thing with the Nickelodeon is you come down there and it's this really cool experience. And so I say you don't even, the thing I'm trying to remind people of is when we were younger and we went to the movies and you didn't care what was playing on Friday night.
Right.
You just were going to the movie.
I remember pick something when you got there.
Standing in front of the big posters and being like, oh, well, let's go see this. Or can we sneak into this rated R movie that we're not supposed to see? And so that's what I'm trying to, the message I want to get back out there is it doesn't matter what's showing. You should just want to go to the movies and have a night of it and go walk down Main Street to one of the restaurants, have a drink beforehand. What I like to say is go to the movie first and then go to dinner after because you have something to talk about, especially if it's a date. So you've got built-in conversation ready. So that's really, so there's a number of reasons. And then I haven't even talked about programming, but that's.
Well, let's talk about programming.
Oh my God.
What is it like to buy the rights to a major movie?
Sure.
That's pretty cool.
It is really complicated, and I'm really glad that we pay someone to do it. So when I started, I was introduced to this man named Adam. Adam lives in Connecticut, and Adam's job is to watch every movie that comes out and then buy movies for nonprofit theaters. So he has about 50 clients.
I wish I knew Adam's job existed before this.
Oh, no.
Let's get that job.
Let's not.
Actually, no. And I'll tell you.
Doesn't that sound terrible?
Okay, so you're thinking I get to watch all the cool movies. Mm-mm. You don't get to watch all the cool movies. You get to watch all the movies.
That's okay.
And the terrible ones?
85% of them are going to be terrible.
95% of them are terrible.
Yeah.
That's why no one goes to the movies.
So I had a friend in college that he worked at the Twin Theater in Aiken, and he had to watch the print of the movies on Thursday before they started showing them on Friday, just to make sure the print happened. So he would invite his friends to come down there and kind of party a little bit and watch a movie at midnight on Thursday. So we would go down there, and I saw some of the worst movies I have ever seen. Congo was terrible. We saw Johnny Mnemonic, which was just unwatchably bad.
I forgot about that movie.
So your guy in Connecticut
is
like, what if you don't like his perspective?
Oh, so we push back. So Adam will say, this is up to you. Your programming is what y'all do. Here are my recommendations based on the fact that I'm an expert and I've been doing this for 20 years, right? So I value his opinion. Coming into a world where I was live theater and education and had no film background, but was like really strong in arts nonprofits, I had a lot to learn, right, when it came to film. So having an expert in place to be like, here's what I suggest for your market has been Also, he has to negotiate with the studios, and they are not fun. No. Also, a lot of people don't realize this, but many smaller film companies during the pandemic were purchased by the larger companies because they couldn't survive, right? So, I mean, I think that happened to a lot of companies, and it isn't talked about as much as it should be because often people will say, oh, well, why aren't you playing this indie film? And I'm like, what film is owned by Universal Pictures, under their subsidiary? And so Universal and all these major companies bought all these smaller companies and then decided they're not profitable to put these movies in theaters, so they send them straight to streaming. So that's a whole other thing. But Adam is like, you do what you want to do. He gives me stories about, times when it's worked in the past where the Nick has done some of its own programming, and then times in the past where it has really worked against them. Yeah. And they're very strict about when you bring movies in, what you can show. And I am just really glad I don't have to be the one negotiating that.
What's the typical budget for
stuff
like that?
So a movie comes in, and it comes in as most of them as a percentage. So, it can be anywhere from 35% to, I think the highest so far that we've had was Barbie at 64%. So 64% of every ticket that we sold went back to the studio.
Wow.
What's the most popular thing in programming that y'all do? Are you showing Mission Impossible right now?
We did, yeah. So we showed it over.
Is that more popular than?
Oh, absolutely.
Than the indies?
Oh, it's impossible. Like the thing is we have to show, like right now especially, they're just the only movies coming out are blockbusters, right? It is
summertime.
So hard to find other, and then also, so let's say like this weekend we've got F1 coming out, right?
Sweet.
And come see it at the Nick. But say we went for a, like maybe Neon is releasing one of their smaller horror films. So if we wanted to say we're going to stay strictly Mission, only play this Neon film.
Right.
Maybe people will come see it.
Right.
Whereas we're going to show F1 and we know people are going to come see it. So we know our members are great and they're going to come see a lot of movies, but I am in the movie theater business.
Sure.
So one of the things is I can't show movies people don't want to see or won't come to see.
Just on principle.
Well, because that's my obligation to Columbia. Now, this is a big battle. Mm-hmm. People are like, well, no, you're the Nickelodeon. Your mission needs to be independent film. I argue, what do you mean by independent film?
It can be.
Yeah.
But also you need to make money.
I have to pay my staff. Like number one, every 2 weeks, I have to pay people. Yeah. And also, guess what? The Nickelodeon is open. Yeah. It is open 7 days a week, and you can come there and you can have fun. And it's not open? 2,100 movie theaters across the country.
Right.
And there's a very big reason why. And we're very unique because one of the things about our market is we, as an indie film house, were able to pivot to mainstream movies.
Oh, sure.
Many theaters did not have that buy-in from their community. So when Barbenheimer happened, there were some indie theaters that showed those movies and didn't have people come see them there because they went to their multiplexes. Right. We luckily had a community say, oh, well, but they're showing Barbie, let's go see it. It's the highest grossing movie in Nickelodeon history is Barbie. So
I'm sure Wicked did well.
Wicked did very well.
It's going
in the
to
top
do well
10.
in the fall.
It'll do well in the fall. And so it's just this really interesting give and take. But what we do is we use that to fund our special programming. Mm-hmm. So I will say one of our most popular special programs is a series. It's called the Real Talk series. So it's every Wednesday. We show, except in the summer months because they get very strict and we can't have extras. Anyway, That's the business. We show a documentary, a foreign film, a classic, and then we do a book club. And so we've been doing that for a year now. And so in March, we hit a year, and I really noticed that attendance was picking up because we've been consistent with it. Right. So, on a Wednesday night at the Nick, there's going to be some sort of special programming. Yeah. And there's going to be a documentary or a foreign film or classic, or you can come and listen to me yap about this book that we've read. So tomorrow is Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Okay. I was going to say, is the book also a movie?
So it's read it before you see it. And it all started with... last summer we had It Ends With Us, which is a controversial novel.
It is.
Written by Colleen Hoover. The movie was controversial, everything about it. But I also knew because every single student that I had at Spring Hill had read that novel.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I was like, if the girlies are reading it, the moms are reading it. And if the moms are reading it, it's going to do well for us. Book club movies do really well for us. So, people came out in hordes. And I said, we picked one night and said, if you read the book, stick around afterwards and we'll talk about it. So we did that for that Conclave and Wicked. Conclave was amazing. We had the best discussion afterwards. There was a whole thing about turtles. If you haven't seen it, watch it.
I saw the first 38 minutes of Conclave and fell asleep. And it didn't get really rolling.
Were you in a recliner?
I was at my house.
See?
I was on my couch.
The couch will do it.
Yep. And my couch is super comfy.
But here's where I argue about movie theaters, right?
Yeah.
If you were sitting at the Nick, you felt the suspense.
Yeah.
Because you were feeling it with everyone around you. I'm not even kidding. Like, that movie was it was intense reading the book, but also it's a slow burn intensity. Yeah. And then this big twist ending, and we just had this great conversation, and we knew it was going to get a lot of nominations, and that's really fun for us. And
I love John Lithgow, and I love Stanley Tucci, and I love Isabella Rossellini, and I was in. As soon as it came on, whatever Amazon Prime or whatever it was on, I was like, okay, cool.
My argument, about theaters is, the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. So when it came out, I had already accepted the job at the Nick, but it was during that interim time, and so they were only showing movies on Friday and Saturday nights. So I went with my best friend, and we went on Friday night, and it was packed. And that is an absolutely ridiculous movie. It is insane. Sausage finger. So much is happening that I think I had the time of my life with this 100 people I'd never met before. I was stomping my feet laughing.
And I watched it on streaming and didn't get it.
Everybody who watched it at home was like, I don't know, that movie's kind of weird. I'm like, absolutely, because you missed the shared experience.
Everybody reacts at the same time.
Watching this absolute bananas film together, and it just changed the entire environment. And so that is why the whole idea of the shared experience is so important in any sort of art you're talking about.
Well, to be fair, I loved the creative choices. I loved how far they went with it. I didn't understand it. There are several of those movies that I see that are smart movies that I go, I don't get it. And I don't want to admit that I don't get it. So if I saw it with friends, I'd go, oh yeah, it was great, but
I love that you admit you don't get it, because that's something
on the podcast. I'm saying I want to
say that I would love for more people to say I didn't get something, because the thing is we have these conversations. It's like, all right, well, that was made. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was made for a different market. It wasn't made for you.
No, of course. That
most movies aren't made for me.
No, totally. Yeah, that's
but
that's
it's such a good
we're
conversation. It's such a good conversation, because we often get people who are like, but I wanted to see this movie. Mm-hmm. Why aren't you showing this movie? And I'm like, because I can't just show movies that you would like us to show. I also have this very big sense of responsibility to Columbia, one, to keep the Nickelodeon open,
right,
and to have a fun, thriving movie theater on Main Street is really cool, and then also to Main Street.
Yeah.
So when we were talking about bringing the Taylor Swift movie, which came during a really interesting time, I said, I mean, that's potentially, thousands of people that are going to come to Main Street to see this movie instead of going to Harbison.
That wouldn't come otherwise.
Yeah. Harbison doesn't need foot traffic like we do. So that was a big factor. Also, that was during the writers and actors strike.
Right.
And punch me in the face. What a really interesting time to be in the movie industry that I had no idea was going to impact my life.
Right. Sure.
And she had gotten permission for everyone on strike to produce her film and put it out.
Yeah.
So it was incredible, and we would have had no other movies to show at that time, and we were pulling from the deep, dark archives. Talk about movies that were made to be on a shelf. were being put out because there were no other movies to put out there. So it's really, really interesting.
Well, and I will tell you, I love that we're having this conversation about about the programming at the Nick, because I'm friends with Chris Bickle on Facebook, and he is outspoken,
absolutely,
as a I guess commentator about the programming at the Nick, which, you know, because he makes indie horror films, so, and he makes kind of intentionally indie horror films, right?
Is that just another version for bad?
Not bad, not necessarily bad, just DIY, very kind of like DIY looking and exploitation looking. And he, he's had a lot to say about the fact that
well, let's be very clear about Chris Bickle.
Okay.
Chris Bickle, let's see, in 2023, I believe, we did an event with him where we sort of previewed his new movie.
Yeah.
It was excellent. We had a great time.
Yeah.
He emailed me last summer and was like, I want to do an open premiere for my movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, we are booked.
Right.
We only have a certain number of dates that we can do special programs, and we have literally booked every single one of those dates. I can do something in January, and we would love to do it. We had so much fun last year. We would love to be able to do this for you. I never heard back from him. The next thing I heard was people being like, I can't believe you're refusing to show Chris Bickle's film, but you're showing all these other films.
Well, and the thing is, I don't know Chris personally. We're just Facebook friends, and I see him talking about it, right? And so I go, well, that's interesting. I wonder if there's another side to that story, but I don't see it. Or
I messaged him and I said, this is, we're having this really interesting thing happen where people are saying that we refuse to show your movie. That's not at all what happened. Like, we offered to do it at a date. And he screenshotted my message and put it up. And somebody was like, I don't think this is doing what you think it's doing. Like, she's being very clear about how they couldn't book you during that time. And then there was a whole article written in the Post and Courier in the Free Times about it, and how they had to take all of their, huge amount of support and go to Charlotte to show this movie. And they went to Charlotte to a theater that has 3 screens, one of which is purely rentals. So there's no programming that would need to be stopped to show a film.
Well, and I will say too that a controversy like that is not something that happens at the AMC Theater in Harbison. Right. Nobody has the expectation of the AMC Theater in Harbison that they're going to do anything at all. Right. They do what they want. Right.
Also, he picked the busiest time of year.
Yeah.
Do you show his film for free?
I absolutely. So what we would have done, what we were trying to do is I think when we did his last one, we did a ticket split. So actually, I think when we did his original one, we gave him all of the profits because we did it as in partnership with Jam Room Festival. So what we usually do with something like this is we'll do a ticket split so that we can cover just the cost of existing and like the loss of revenue we would have from any other movie that would be showing this time. And it's very low. And, but the majority of the proceeds would go to him. And so he, and I legitimately was like, let's find a time to do this. We'd absolutely be happy to. And I never got a response.
Well, and I'm a huge supporter of what he's doing as far as like, I'm a huge supporter of like just jumping in and making art when you feel like it needs to be made. And, we had Jay Matheson on the podcast yesterday, and, that's kind of, in a lot of ways, even though Chris and I aren't really, I don't really know him, but like we're in the same circles.
Sure.
And so that sort of musician punk rock circle is one thing that says, death to corporate America, or whatever. And, Jay and Brian and I were talking yesterday about albums that the Jam Room has made that were big, and none of which Brian would have even remotely heard of. Right. I only really heard of them because I've gone to the Jam Room for so long.
Right.
I saw the albums on the wall and stuff like that, but I think it's just a very different kind of mindset, towards
where it becomes problematic, right, is when you start to get personal.
Yeah.
And that was my main issue, is because this was clearly a logistics situation. We were unable to show your film. You decided that you wanted to take it personally and then make it personal. So I personally was being dragged all over the internet.
Yeah, and
there's a
no
Reddit
fun.
forum about me. This guy came into the gym and was like, people on Reddit hate you.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I don't read Reddit, so I don't really care.
That sounds like notoriety, though.
So I was like,
yeah.
And I was like, listen, I'm the executive director of the Nickelodeon. I am the face of this organization. If there's controversy happening, I'm the one that has to take it, right?
Right.
So I completely understand that. If you ever start being mean to my staff,
yeah,
we're going to have a different conversation. Yeah. But it was really interesting, and nobody wanted to get involved because it's a bunch of keyboard warriors, right? So we got so much support from people. We had so many bumps in membership. We had so many people reaching out to us and being like, this narrative is insane. We really appreciate all the work that you're doing, and please continue to do it. And finally, some people started pushing back and saying, it's really interesting you're saying this, because actually when you go look at their website, they're doing exactly what you say they're not doing.
Right.
So when does it become pushing a narrative, and when does it become the truth? But I'm in the nonprofit world of arts, and it is bananas.
Yeah.
Because at Trustus, we had the company, which was a group of people who felt so passionately about that organization that every decision you made got scrutinized. And it was like, you can't do everything for everyone. So somebody's going to be mad about something. So listen, I ruffled a lot of feathers at Trustus, but Trustus Theater is open.
Yeah.
And it's showing.
Well, and I think that's such an interesting benchmark for you to say it's open.
Yeah.
Right? The theater at Dutch Square is not open.
It's not open.
Right? You know, I mean, there's so many of those things that go on, and I think it's a very interesting conversation because of it being the only real independent theater in the area, you know.
Well, how do you go about balancing being the face of a very prominent organization in Columbia and having the freedom to say what you want online? Sure.
I mean, it also comes with maturity. Like, there's just things I'm not going to say online that, had you caught me in my 20s, I'm just really glad I didn't have a camera in my face when I was in my 20s, because we didn't have social media like we did. I'm very thankful for that. But we don't comment on most of it, you know. So
but your personal accounts, you said you had.
I just ignored them. You know, it was all on my Instagram. I was getting tagged.
But don't you have like, thoughts about what's happening now, or
Absolutely.
How do you balance that?
I have to choose what's best for the organization. I'm never not the executive director of the Nickelodeon. So it is in every action that I do and every conversation that I have. So as a publicly funded entity, I have to think about that when I'm doing this job. And yeah, it's really frustrating at times, because I want to be like, okay, why are you being so mean to me? Like, I'm literally just working really hard, and I'm working really hard. And I was like, please don't be mean to me, you know?
I'm supportive of that answer.
Yeah.
You know, I should do that. Why are you being
so mean to me?
Nobody's ever mean to me, because I don't ever say anything that important, but you know.
But people are, and I have somehow worked myself into so many jobs where people are just mean to you all the time. So at Trustus, people were very mad about things like, you know, filing tax forms when I was supposed to, and things of that nature. And
those silly things
like making it a viable corporation. And then amongst other things. And then I was a teacher.
Yeah.
And literally my second year teaching, the superintendent, this guy retired while I was teaching, thankfully, but not the superintendent, maybe it was the superintendent, but he said, "We're watching you." He said, "You need to be like long-tailed cats on a porch with rocking chairs.
Wow.
We know where you go, we know who you're with, and we know what you're drinking."
Wow.
And this was in the pep rally for teachers at the beginning of the year. And this new teacher behind me, who's an English teacher, was like, "What in the 1984?" And I was like, "You were never safe at school. I never was comfortable." Also, I cast people in shows, and there was, someone who worked at the district level who did not like me because I never cast this person's children in lead roles. And so I was given a lot of flack in some areas because of that. And it's just, and then, oh gosh, you teach the arts, so you're teaching all sorts of stuff. And I was regularly getting phone calls about, spreading my liberal agenda.
Oh,
and I was like, we were talking about Greek mythology, which they talk about in English, so it was just really interesting. I tried to provide a safe space for students to have conversations, and it regularly came back on me.
Wow.
But then once again, and actually it's really interesting. So my father is a First Amendment attorney. So he is like one of the preeminent First Amendment attorneys in the Southeast. So that can
very much be helpful.
Very helpful. Yeah. It also gives me a weird sense of confidence in when I was teaching that I think other teachers probably didn't have.
Right.
Because I'd be like, what are you going to do about it? And there were times where I really did make decisions where I was like, when I was thinking about leaving, I was like, sometimes it really just isn't worth it. Like the joy I feel of doing these productions versus having your principal walk in your room and say, this person's parents are on the phone because they didn't like the way another student, you handled a situation.
Yeah.
And you never knew what
yeah.
was going to happen. I had my assistant principal my first year teaching. She called me and she's like kind of lecturing me. And I was like, I'm sorry. Have I done something wrong? She goes, not yet.
Oh my God.
I said, what? Excuse me? And I actually ended up working with her that next year to help her implement sort of a training program for new teachers to come in so that they would know how they were being evaluated. And I was like, because the biggest stressor for me was I never knew what y'all were looking for when you came in my room because I wasn't a teacher. I was doing the PACE program. Like I was just a regular person who was like, I'm gonna go teach now. Mm-hmm. And so I went from, I'm at Trustus getting flack from everyone. Then I'm teaching, I'm getting flack from everyone, but also both times, great people who support me and love me and appreciate what I do. There was one time where parents got involved and there were 3 times as many parents calling my principal and being like, if you touch this woman, like we're all going to be, you're going to have a walkout. And then at the Nick, it's the same thing. Like lots of people are mad at me about having to make decisions that they don't like, but also they aren't in this position and they've never had the experience that I've had. So I run a $1.1 million operation. People in my comments, you show me your tax returns and we'll talk about the decisions that you're making. And when you've been in that comparable position or you can provide informed feedback, I'm ready to have a conversation about it.
So why Columbia? It seems like you could do this anywhere.
I love that question.
Why do it here?
I don't know. I just kind of got stuck. Not in a bad way, but I went to China for a year. So listen, I'm a exennial. This is not my first Republican president to bomb a foreign country, right? I lived through that. And then in the 2008 crash, I was working at a nonprofit and they were like, we're going to fire people. And he literally was like, it's between your position and another position. And I'm not even kidding. And my boss at the time was mad at me for doing this because she was like, always look out for yourself first. But the other person had kids. Mm-hmm. I'm not even kidding. And I was like, don't fire the person with kids. Like, she needs health insurance, And I was like, I'm going to go to China. So I did. I was like, they have money. We don't, but they do. So not a lick of Mandarin had I ever learned in my entire life. I emailed this woman. It was very sketchy. She drove a van around town. And she just like put me in Xi'an. And I flew to Xi'an one day and I just like jumped in feet first. And I was like, this is the best experience of my life.
You speak Mandarin now?
I will not because it would be very offensive. I learned a lot of Mandarin and I could speak it 6 months in. So I was having conversations in Mandarin, which is crazy. But my teacher very often would say, stop saying some words because the way that you say them are really
sounds
inappropriate.
Like something else. Yeah.
Because it's a tonal language and I have a tonal voice. Yeah. And then this other Southerner came in and she had the same problem. So we realized it's just something about our Southern accent.
But they know you're American, so they don't expect much from you.
Listen, I was like a celebrity. I mean, you would have thought I was Britney Spears. The way that they crowd, like one day I looked up, I was like buying bananas and there's just a crowd around me and they're asking to take photos with me and the kids are pointing. And then I'm tall. Oh my God, you couldn't get it better than me over there. And I was the only American that made it in my program. 4 came and all of them left except for me because we were sort of in a workhorse program. This was not a cushy. Yeah. They were like, we're going to make money off of you and the fact that you speak English for a living.
Well, so when TikTok was being banned in January, a lot of us got onto Red Note.
Sure.
Did you ever get on Red Note?
No, but I was doing a social media cleanse during January, so I wasn't even on TikTok at that time.
It's kind of a controversial time to do a social media cleanse because everybody's talking about it.
So I do dry January social media because
Nice.
I don't drink very often, so that wouldn't make a big difference for me. But anyway, when I came back from China, when I was over there, it's really funny though. Obama had put a tariff on tires.
Oh, okay.
And, the one tariff on the one item that needed to be protected in the U.S. And it was really interesting. I was in a cab and had my regular, they always, where are you from? What do you do? And I said, I'm American and I'm an English teacher. And they said, oh, don't tell people you're from America right now.
Oh, right. Because
they were like, the tariff. They were like, Obama tire. Like they would say, Obama tire bad.
Right.
And I was like, I'm Canadian, obviously. I'm clearly from Canada.
Yeah.
And but I met the coolest people. I roomed with this woman from England, and we're still good friends. And we've traveled to see each other a bunch of times. I went to her wedding. But when I came back, I had a decision. It was literally, when you're at a crossroads in your life. I had a job opportunity in Shanghai. They were going to give me it was going to be one of those cushy jobs teaching, or I could come home. And I realized if I went to Shanghai, I'd stay forever. And probably end up being one of those expats that's over there and like married and has kids and they're living their best lives. But I missed community. So China is one of those countries where the family units are so strong. So they live with their families for a long time. There's not this, you're 18, get out of the house mentality. It is very communal. And I was so outside of that it was very isolating at times. And I had my community. So I left, Trustus to go over there and left this whole arts community and I missed it. And so when I came back, I literally walked into Trustus and Kay looked up and she goes, literally cigarette in the mouth. She was like, all is right with the world because I was back. And then I just stayed. And then there was always something more to do. Nice. So I love New York. And I love LA. I've been both places multiple times. And I appreciate you saying that because I feel like I could have made it anywhere.
Yeah.
But I decided to stay here.
I think a lot of us in Columbia feel like we could have made it anywhere and we chose to be here.
Yeah.
Which I think is a nice feeling.
It is. And we want more people to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Brian left and went to LA for
6 years.
6 years.
I love it.
To be an actor.
Oh, yeah.
But I am an actor.
Well, but to be an actor, that was why you went. You didn't go to work in a construction company. You went to be an actor. And so I never did. I just, I realized I didn't love theater as much as I thought I did. I didn't realize when I went to college that theater wasn't musical theater.
Yes.
And when I went to theater in college, it was all like speaking.
So you don't actually have a theater degree?
I don't. No, I dropped out.
Yeah, because you had a philosophy degree.
I have a computer science degree.
Oh.
With a philosophy minor.
Okay.
Yeah. But
I am the only one on this set
with a theater
degree.
I know.
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And look, degrees are funny that way, right?
They really are.
Because it just doesn't really matter what you do when you're 22.
Listen, the conversations I had with my students about it, because you had the ones that were very driven and they knew what they were going to do. But the other ones, I was like, God, communication, my guy, psychology, sociology, like those degrees, if you want the college experience, those are great degrees to get because they're a foundation on anything else that you do. And you can build on that. And you can build on it. And acting is a great minor, or if you want to do major, go for it. You're never going to regret having those skills. Those are the soft skills that, Google wants. They're like, we want you to be able to have a conversation with someone.
To make a living as an actor, Brian knows.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It's difficult. It's a difficult life. Even if you're successful, it's difficult. And I realized, I guess it was probably summer between my sophomore and junior year, like I was auditioning for the whole spring to try to get a job over the summer. And I was like, I hate auditioning. I hate it. I hate walking into this room with 1,000 other people who are more talented and better looking than I am, and I have to hope that I get the job.
It's really hard
because they like my haircut or my shirt, or this is not for me, And so I realized I could do a lot of this stuff without having to be a living, and I just really enjoyed doing it. That was why I majored in it.
And I love it too because then, that's the great thing about the local theaters is because, we have extremely talented people in Columbia and you're going to see some great shows if you go watch. But it's all people with day jobs, who
of course.
They have this passion and they want to be on stage and it's very difficult to make it in that field for a living. So if you have that opportunity, it's great, but most people don't.
Well, and I'm in a group of musicians right now that is kind of post doing it for a living. We're like all just kind of doing it for fun now.
Sure.
You know, and mostly we would all kind of agree that we're definitely past that point, you know, where we're trying to do it for a living.
Right.
And so we just have a lot of fun. And I don't, you know, we're not worried about getting paid for it exactly. I mean, it's just sort of, you know, fun
I went
to do.
and watched one of my friends' band play. I mean, this was years ago, and I was just like, these people are having the best night of their lives. And it's like a Tuesday on State Street, and they're having, and it's because this is what they love doing.
Yeah.
So,
and the thing is, like, you know, the practice is fun.
Right.
You know, we all get together and mess around and talk about concerts we've been to and, you know, all that stuff. And it's just like, this is what our retirement homes are going to look like in about 20 years.
Absolutely.
Like when we're all in our 70s.
That is a great new TV show.
I know.
Oh my God.
I know, rock and roll retirement home. Yeah.
Listen,
I
the
thought
amount
about
of guitar collections that it will be in retirement.
Oh my God.
homes.
Yeah. It's like, that's my investment is my guitar collection. But you know, all of us in black t-shirts and you know, long gray beards and you know, band shirts and you know, that's what
sitting
retirement
down
homes
playing
are.
the guitar.
That's right. We're not going to be sitting around playing canasta or whatever. We're gonna be sitting around with our guitars. That's right. They'll have soundproof rooms. Anybody can rent the soundproof room to get in and jam for a little while. You know, forming new bands.
You'll be critiquing each other in that like old misery kind of way.
Oh
be
yeah.
Like, oh, do you hear what he was doing?
You know,
trash.
I saw them play in 1994 at the you know
You haven't lived if you haven't.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Dave Matthews in 2 nights in a row.
Oh my God.
2 nights in a row sounds
so good.
Oh my goodness. So I am just enough of a Gen Xer that I look at Dave Matthews and go, I would not want to see Dave Matthews for an hour. He's got a phenomenal band. It's one of the greatest bands, like backing musicians, but
Sure.
I just I would not want to be in that
Listen,
crowd.
I've been ridiculed my entire life for being a Dave Matthews fan.
Well, look, it works for the age group.
I think Dave Matthews resonates more with the Midwest.
Really?
Interesting.
Okay.
See, I'm into...
He's Southern, right? He's from Atlanta?
No, he's South African.
Yeah.
So he's from South Africa. And his family...
I know nothing
How
about
much would you like
Dave
to know?
Matthews.
His family moved to Virginia after there was like a huge tragedy in South Africa.
Okay.
And so they moved to Virginia. And so he lived in Charlottesville. And that's where he put his band together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the 3 of the original band members have been with him from the beginning.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why he has, I think, a really interesting voice because he's South African.
Oh, okay.
And
But like when they first burst onto the scene,
it was Frats. The Frats had the tapes, buddy.
I learned of Dave Matthews through my sister,
right,
who is only 1 year younger than you.
Mm-hmm.
When she was in college,
Yeah.
they went bananas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Them and Hootie at the same time.
Yep.
And
Blues Traveler and like that whole
and that whole so it started way back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then all of the siblings and cousins attached to it because
passed down.
Oh, the cool older siblings.
So I stole my
listening
brother's
to it.
CD
Yeah.
when I was in middle school. So it was like 1992, I think, when Remember Two Things came out, and we were going on a trip, and I had my Discman and my stolen Dave Matthews CD, and it was, you know, it's like you remember the CDs that are kind of, or the music that's life changing. So that came out, and then the next year, Jagged Little Pill came out.
Oh wow.
And I was like, you can't. I was like, I was the most emotional.
Oh yeah.
Preteen that had ever existed, and these 2 albums were just like soothing my soul, and so that is when I got into it, and it's 100% always been the lyrics for me. I love the way that he does it. I love when you get loud and then you get quiet and you get loud again, but his lyricism to me is...
But I have like cousins who are like 9 years younger than me, who have tattooed like the Dave Matthews Band symbol tattoos. Like he's actually been able to transcend generation.
He had, well, so somebody at the gym yesterday or on Monday, they were like, oh, was that yesterday? Yeah. They were like, how's your Boomer concert you went to? So it's just all over the place.
It's become old people music.
I will say the last time, 2 years ago, was the last time he was here, and I went to go see him, and there was this young person behind me, and I turned around and I said, how did you get into Dave Matthews? I mean, he's probably in his early 20s. So I was like, how did you get into it? And he goes, my dad.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, good. And he was like, and now I love him, and I've been to see him so many times. And I was like, that's great.
When I was in high school, one of my favorite bands was Led Zeppelin.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This would have been 1988. 1990. So I was into Led Zeppelin from the early 70s. And if Led Zeppelin had still been together and had a concert, I'd have gone in a second. I'd have paid whatever it took to go to see Led Zeppelin. And Black Sabbath and Aerosmith, and there's a bunch of those bands that I love from the 70s when I was in high school. So I could see that happening. You know, and Dave is one of those where I recognize how incredibly intricate the musicality is.
It is very intricate,
and the way, and you know, it's the reason why you don't see cover bands playing Dave Matthews songs, because very few people can do it.
Yeah,
right. They can't do the crazy twirly whirly that he's doing on the guitar.
And Carter Beauford is like an award-winning drummer.
But then he's got a violin player and a tenor sax player. It's the most bizarre band that you've ever seen. But you know,
and I love it, and that's what makes like that backdrop to the lyrics are just it goes so hard. So the way that I experience it is Friday night is great, but it's always a little more chilled. There's a little more deep cuts, very jam bandy. Then Saturday, he just blows it out of the water. And I mean, it was one of the best concerts I've ever been to.
Didn't he play last weekend in Charlotte?
Yeah, it was this. No.
Or is it this weekend?
We were in Daniel Island.
But wasn't it like, did he just play? I think he just played in Charlotte.
Idea.
It might be part of his tour.
That was like a 90s weekend. Like they had Gwen Stefani play.
And they had a festival.
Yeah.
So it was like the Live, Love, Life festival.
Yeah, and he was on Sunday, I think.
Yeah. So he's regularly doing festivals and stuff. And so, I mean, I've probably seen him pretty much every year since starting.
Wow. Isn't he like the longest touring band?
I mean, what else is he going to do?
But like he does, like all he does is tour.
Nobody's selling music anymore. So I mean, you know,
and
you gotta.
So I've been going. So I laughed because I have this Dave Matthews concert that I saw a long time ago. I was like, that was the best Dave Matthews concert I've ever seen in my life. And then this past Saturday was sort of the same, and I was like, I can't believe I've gone to one that's comparable. And I was like, when was that other one? It was in 2003, right after we had bombed Iraq.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, and literally during the Dave Matthews concert on Saturday this past weekend is when we bombed Iran. So I was like, looky here. I was like, wow.
It's Dave Matthews.
It's cycle. It's me going to Dave Matthews. Yep. Sorry, everyone.
It's a combination of things.
It has nothing to do with Republican presidents.
It's the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
You know, like you going to see Dave Matthews makes that happen across the world. Well, I saw Nine Inch Nails in 1994 at the Fox Theater in Atlanta.
I love Fox Theater.
And then I saw them again in 2018 at the PNC in Charlotte. And the 2018 show was easily as good as the 1994 show, and that's the only band I've ever seen that I've seen them twice, and the second one was as good.
Been as great.
Yep, because they lose something over the course of time. It's like there's nothing but that was.
And the relationships you have to maintain are it's fascinating because I can't even imagine like the interpersonal.
To be able to keep it up for that long. Yeah.
In those close quarters and so.
Well, because Dave's had the same band for.
Yeah. Right. Only one different changed violin players. I think something dramatic happened with the original one, and then the this guy
tenor sax
died. And so they got a new guy who's great. But other than that, it's the same people. And then, Tim Reynolds usually just played acoustic with him, and now he's just on tour with them.
Nice.
So, I saw them in 1996 at the Township.
Wow.
And the crowd was terrible. Yeah. And so that was one of the rumors that the crowd was so bad he refused to come back to South Carolina.
Oh, right.
Because it was it was all frat boys. And it was rough. But I also think that there were a lot of people who wouldn't come here because of the Confederate flag for a long time.
But that's been gone since
10 years.
15, right?
We just had the 10-year anniversary of it.
Because we work with Famously Hot New Year the year that it came down, and Lauryn Hill
played because she wouldn't come here
of that.
Prior.
Yeah. And so
that was a concert.
Yeah, that was crazy. I was up on the front. I was in the media pit.
How late was she?
45 minutes.
Yeah.
And we sat there for 45 minutes. The poor DJ was sitting back there hyping up the crowd. He's hyping up the crowd.
I had one of the wig tickets, so I
she's gonna be out any minute. Let me go check on it again. Yeah. And then he was hyping up the crowd, and everybody was like 30 minutes in. We're like, is she coming? Because and we're all sitting up. Me and like the media the state photographers and the journalists are all sitting up there, and we're going, she may not make it.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, Sumner, thank you so much.
Ask you your favorite band.
Well,
listen,
so here's no, that's right. Yeah, we can skip that one because we know what that is. Don't
underestimate my love for Taylor Swift.
Well,
I am a Swiftie.
I saw your video about
through and through.
Yeah. So it's it's another one. I think as a Gen Xer, I may not just be allowed to like certain things.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm obligated not to like it,
Yeah.
but I just don't.
Yeah.
And I've given it a shot.
That's all right.
I do like some things off of Reputation.
Yeah.
I feel like
it's one of my favorite
those
albums.
are closer to metal songs than anything else, and so Look What You Made Me Do is a metal song waiting to happen, I think.
Well, and so, it's been done.
Has it?
So yeah, you can see there's lots of covers. So for me, it's really interesting. Again, like I've never been a country music fan, so I didn't really get introduced to Taylor Swift until 2012 when her Red album came out, because that's when she like dabbled in pop, and it's just really interesting. And I think that every time, she just feeds us, right? So every time an album has come out, it has spoken to that time in my life. And so 2014, the 1989, I was driving to and from the South Carolina Theatre Association convention as a board member, and it was 45 minutes to Aiken and back. And I just listened to that album over and over. And then, after that, so it's something about her, and Dave Matthews is the same way, is that both its lyricism, they've produced music so often in my lifetime that it's just linked.
I do like the Ryan Adams version of 1989 if you haven't heard it. So whatever.
Oh, I've heard it.
I don't know anything politically about Ryan Adams, but I do like the 1989.
That was it was really interesting when that happened, because there was a lot of discourse around, oh, well, now a guy's done it, so it's valuable.
No, I just No,
I know. I'm just saying.
I liked his rendition. So okay, and I will say thank you so much for doing this. This was so fun to talk about this stuff.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So we always end up with 5 favorites, and so we don't need to ask you band at this point, or concert really. What is your favorite movie?
So it's a tie. So I told you I just did a podcast the other day talking about Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Because Jurassic Park is one of my favorite movies. But I would have to say Almost Famous.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Dude, that's one I've seen a bunch.
I love it.
Okay.
And
so who is Stillwater then in your head? Who are they trying to be in that movie?
Oh, well, it's all that generation of music you were talking about.
Right.
And which I associate with the generation right before me.
So it's not Black Sabbath because they went to see Black Sabbath in the movie. So and I'm thinking maybe it's the Allman Brothers, but maybe it's like.
It is, but I feel like that's not a bad, I wouldn't really know. I just love them. But God, I'm in it for so Penny Lane, my guy.
Oh yeah.
And so the fascinating thing about it is then I went and listened. I think they do a slow burn about making that movie, and it's really, really interesting. And there's a moment where you see some of the best acting that I've ever seen on film. And it's when Kate Hudson learns that she was sold for a case of beer.
Right.
And she's in the park, and the single tear falls from her cheek, and she just and the look on her face, and she just wipes it away. And she says, "What beer?
Yeah.
What kind of beer?" That 30 seconds, I was locked in. No one has ever been more locked in than Kate Hudson was in that moment.
Brought Tiny Dancer into the general consciousness.
Loved it. And that was always such a great song anyway.
Yeah. Man, I love that movie. So that's
and
a great
I love
answer.
the perspective. So it comes from that, the journalist perspective. Yeah. If there's a movie about journalism, I've seen it and I love it.
Yeah, that's great. Good answer. What's your favorite musical?
That's tough.
I don't know.
So I've seen an extreme amount of Broadway shows.
Okay.
So, but I will say, I don't think it can be denied Hamilton. Into the Woods. Into the Woods is probably my longest running, deepest love of a musical. That's why I keep directing it. And every time I do it, I'm like, stop directing this for children.
Yeah.
It's really difficult music. And then they're doing it. And I'm also like, this is so weird.
Is it Sondheim?
Sondheim.
Yeah, Sondheim. Yeah.
And I would regularly during Tech Week, I was like, I need y'all to understand that you're doing a Sondheim musical. And so the work that you're doing is harder than it should be. And you're doing a good job because it's Sondheim. And when I did it at Spring Hill, I didn't have the first couple of years. I didn't bring anyone in to do musical directing, and I don't read music, so I had to teach myself how to read music so that we could get through this one song, because he did it in 3/3 and in 6, and I was like, why? Because he's Catholic, because he likes to challenge you.
Have you dug into Lin-Manuel Miranda's kind of like approach to music in Hamilton? Because it's similarly a little crazy.
Yeah. Oh,
the way that he
everything about it is just, it's again, lyricism. Yeah. You can print, and my dad did this, so they were going to see it, and he printed out the lyrics so that he could read through them, so you kind of have an idea of what they were saying. But it's, again, the story being told. I mean, the music's so catchy, and you go through your different, it's almost like having different albums that you like, because you're like, oh, I'm really into the Burr songs today. Right. I'm really into the Schuyler sisters today. I'm really into the King today. There's no end to how many different perspectives you can take from listening, watching, and loving that musical.
I will say that if there's ever a community theater production of Hamilton, I'm going out for King George. I've not been in a musical since I was in college, but
that's the best role, because you get to, I mean, it's just funny. It's lighthearted. It comes at such a perfect time. And
the song is so good.
And he's just ridiculous.
It's so good.
Because he was a ridiculous person in real life.
And I don't understand the pushback. I have heard people say that they don't like Hamilton. I'm like, what are you dead inside?
People like to
Do you not have a heart?
Popular things. Yeah, this is like why I get a lot of flack on the internet, because
use the popular things you just kind of reject.
I often say, I actually wrote about it in the Post and Courier. I often say, like, if something's popular, it doesn't mean it's bad. If something is popular, it means it resonates with people.
That's right.
And because
Barbie was a good movie.
Oh, it was great.
Wicked was a good movie.
Barbie.
The Mission Impossible movie is probably a good movie. I haven't seen it yet.
The thing is with Barbie is really interesting, and I talked about it a lot. Like, there was this movement happening in the world. It was like the summer of just femininity, and like outwardly supporting people wearing pink everywhere, and it was so popular, and people came to see it over and over and over again because there was something that you identified with, and we're all searching for connection all the time. And so if something is popular, it's because a lot of people connect to it, and we should never shame somebody for that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So stop being mean to me.
So on the internet, please. I think that's really your plea. Just stop being mean to me,
please.
Yeah.
And where you?
That's what you like right up under your name on all socials.
Stop being mean to me on the internet.
Yeah, that's right.
Stop.
So what would your last meal be on death row?
Ooh, interesting. I am opposed to the death penalty. I'll just throw that out there. While we're talking about it, I have some friends that work in the department that represents people on death row.
But as a hypothetical,
I'm trying to think because when I was younger, I'd have so many different things to say, but I honestly. You cannot go wrong with a good steak. So, like, I don't know, maybe a ribeye.
Okay.
Just the best ribeye that's ever been made.
Sure. With
some scalloped potatoes and, like, a meat and potatoes gal.
Yeah.
Honestly, let's take it back to the basics. I'm a bread girl. I like a bread roll. And my dad laughs so much about this. Like, if I could get all my nutrients in the form of bread, that's all I would eat. So, as long as there is like a Texas Roadhouse bread roll happening.
Like a basket of rolls.
Yeah, give me the basket of rolls and a steak on the side that I can just gnaw on for a little bit.
I love it. That's amazing. Favorite season?
I'm born in June, so but at that time is still spring. Named Sumner, so often get called summer. So you'd think I hate it, but I love summertime.
Okay,
I really
nice.
do.
That's Brian's.
Yeah, it gets such a bad rap.
So many people love fall,
fall is great, but I think I've gotten to a point where summer is slower. And the fall is incredibly busy all the time. The fall and the spring, you cannot do anything because everybody's booked and busy and there's so much happening.
The weather is
I love
great.
A slowdown. Yes. I love, give me a minute to sit back and process everything that's going on.
And last one, favorite dessert?
Ooh. See, I just go back and forth. I love tiramisu. love creme brulee.
Mm-hmm. Both very good choices.
Yeah. Give me a dessert croissant.
Oh, okay.
Chocolate croissant.
Nice. I like it.
Warmed.
Not too bad.
Jay's answer was tiramisu.
Yeah, so, it's really good. I also have I've never been to Louisiana and had beignets.
Oh, yeah.
But I have a feeling that would be maybe my number one of everything.
Stephanie, who works for us, just got back from New Orleans, and she showed me a picture of the beignets that she ate.
I will say sopapilla.
Uh-huh.
So a traditional sopapilla. My dad's from New Mexico. We have a house out there, so we go and visit. And if you go to a traditional Mexican restaurant, you get a sopapilla, which is just a puff of fried dough. Mm-hmm. And you bite off the corner, and then you pour honey in it.
Okay.
And then you eat it, and sometimes there's powdered sugar. And
I'd eat that.
So a real sopapilla, when I was a child, and he took me out there, and, I had absolutely no control over things that I loved. And he gave me one of those. And I was like, for the rest of my life, I've been like, I've never tasted anything as brilliant as that sopapilla I had when I was 9 years old.
Well, beignets are great, so you should definitely go get one.
Yeah, I need to.
Go to New Orleans just to get a beignet.
I really will. I should probably just go to everywhere I go. I'm going to have like a bread destination. Yeah. So Paris, I'm going to get the best croissant I've ever had.
Yeah. Just go to eat and eat for a day and get stuffed and come home. It's nice and easy. That's the way to do New Orleans.
Sounds amazing.
Because it will kill you if you stay longer than that. So.
Listen.
It's a town that'll kill you. Well, Sumner, thank you so much for doing this. This was really fun to talk, and we appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.